The helmeted honeyeater is a absolutely lovely bird. When you see it in nature, it just is so magical to see it.
It's kind of just a wonder. Like when I first saw the helmeted honeyeater in the wild, I stood there and was like, wow. And I don't think photos translate the beauty of what the helmeted honeyeater is and what it stands for. But when you see it in the bush and you know that they're really critically endangered, it's just like an amazing moment. And they're a very special bird, hence why we're trying to protect it.
In the 1950s, a group of community members just determined that this bird was in decline. The population was really plummeting. In the 1960s, this reserve system was set aside. This was a stronghold for the helmeted honeyeater.
Yellingbo Nature Conservation Reserve is a really special place for a whole heap of reasons. It's the last place on Earth to support populations of the helmeted honeyeater and the lowland genetics form of the leadbeater's possum, both of which are the Victorian faunal emblems. Yellingbo Nature Conservation Reserve is also really important because it is home to so many different species. It's home to, whole ecosystems that are preserved that are not preserved elsewhere.
In 1971, again through community effort, the helmeted honeyeater was named as the state bird emblem, recognising its significance for Victorians and in the landscape. In the 1980s, 1989, the community realised again that these bird numbers are plummeting. So the Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeater formed through community effort. The recovery team formed and the captive breeding program started for the helmeted honeyeater. Around 10 years ago, this bird was in trouble. So there were around 50 birds in the wild, 50 individual birds. You kind of need to think about that a moment, like take stock of what that means. The population currently is around 250 birds in the wild, like from 50 birds less than 10 years ago and 250 now. Like that's a phenomenal thing to even be able to say.
One of the big concerns we have here at the Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeater are the impacts of climate change. Climate change affects things like the frequency of storm events, which of course is a great concern to us.
The impact of the storms had left a real scar on the community up here in the hills. I know for myself, during the night, the trees were coming down all around us, and it was just bang, bang all night. To see the devastation was pretty shocking, and it took a number of weeks to get over that, and I still think that a lot of us up here are grieving because of that.
Those winds, those storm events can be really catastrophic for the helmeted honeyeater. Losing those really large old trees, some of them are hundreds of years old, and that's lifetimes to replace one of those trees.
We're really battling down here to keep up with the number of plants we need to produce. I think we're producing in excess of 70,000 plants a year. We're still a bit behind.
Some volunteers in the nursery, for example, have been coming for 10 or more years, week in, week out, pricking out. They can't necessarily go out and do some planting. They might not even have mobility to go out into the reserve and do bird watching, whatever. But they turn up week after week, committed and loyal to do whatever they can to help the greater mission and the greater outcomes. Each person is like a piece of the jigsaw, and without them, the jigsaw is different.
I think the community is really gathered around and helping each other. That's why it's so important for me to come down here, and we've had a lot of devastation down through here, and if we can get more plants growing and get them in the community, it's going to help the wildlife throughout the Yarra Ranges.
The story of the Helmeted Honeyeater is really inspiring because it's a story of hope. It's a story of if we can get enough people who care and who are motivated to take action, to do something together, we can achieve really great things.
I think being part of a friends group or whatever volunteer opportunity it might be, one person can do an amazing amount of work, and the friends group, like over the last 30 years, have saved a threatened species from the brink of extinction because a group of individuals came together and worked together to ultimately save the habitat and repopulate the species. And then as just a young person, I think at the moment it's a bit of a troublesome world that we're living in. It can be quite sad at the moment, and when looking to the future and dealing with climate change and all the conservation issues we're facing, it's nice to come back to this little part of the world and see some positive programs running and conservation efforts, which is really lovely, and it just makes me feel very hopeful for the future.
This is a story of hope for this species, and their friends group certainly are in here for the long haul. Have been here for 32 years, very actively involved in this species recovery, and I would almost guarantee if the Helmeted Honeyeater was in 10 years' time delisted and as a critically endangered species, which we would all hope for, that there would be another reason why the Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeater would still be here actively making sure that that persisted into the future.
They're just a really special bird and quite different to any other bird that's out in this landscape. So it's quite interesting and wonderful. It's such an honour really to be working with them and to watch them and to know that they're wild and this is the last habitat for them at this point.